Croix does 4 series of fly rods. We have 2 beginning price point rods for us, our Mojo Trout and our Mojo Bass Fly. We have Imperial, which is one of our iconic series. It's been in the lineup for over 20 years. And recently, in the last 5 years, we introduced our Imperial Salt, and that's what I wanted to touch on. Imperial Salt is your traditional buildup, fighting butt, very nicely designed reel seat with double locking reel seat nuts, trim piece, full Wells grip, and I love the color that we have on this. The color is a dark matte finish green. We outfit the rod with Fuji guides, double foot stripper, double foot choke guide, and then the snake guides that are, there's the snake guide that is so traditional on fly rods. This series starts at a 7 weight with a fighting butt, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 weight. And these range from $300 to just under $400 in price. They're all 4-piece. One thing that David, Joe, and I were talking about before we got started was the actions of these rods. This series of rods, and that's what well, you can't really see the logo, but that's what the logo looks like. This series of rods was developed for saltwater, but we kept in mind that so many fly anglers aren't catching fish at 80, 90, 100 feet. We like to be able to cast that far because that lets our friends know that we have a good casting stroke and we can throw all that line. But so many times fish are caught 15, 20, 30 feet from the boat. And because of that, we looked at designing a rod that we call more moderate. If you read in the catalog, it says fast action. If you put a traditional 8-weight line on an 8-weight rod in this series, it's going to load a little more easily. It's going to load a little more closely, a little more when you have just a short length of line out. With the faster, stiffer rods, those type rods, you can cast a lot of distance, and you can also cast a little better in the wind than with the moderate action rods. But I think where this rod and this series really shines is whether you're fishing for tail and redfish or you're on a flat around oysters, sight fishing for puppy drum in the fall, where so many shots come, oh my gosh, there he is, 15, 20 feet from the boat. And that short rod will allow you to have maybe 10 or 15 feet of line out. You can still load the rod, you can still turn the fly over and present it in those tight quarters. The other thing that I really like about the Imperial Salt buildup, the way the rod flexes and the way it performs, is for situations where you have to lay the line down pretty lightly. Tailing redfish, real skinny water redfish, bonefish, tarpon, particularly laid up tarpon, probably my favorite thing to do. You have to be able to make sometimes a 60-foot cast and still have that line lay down pretty lightly. With these moderate action rods, you can control your line and get a little more gentle presentation, so you're not spooking fish. That all said, the Imperial Salt really covers a nice gamut. My 2 favorite rods so far in this series is certainly the 8-weight and the 11-weight. I use the 11-weight primarily for tarpon. The 8-weights I do a lot of things with: speckled trout, flounder, redfish. I'm not a bone fisherman, but I throw it for a bonefish. This series also has a different carbon fiber than our regular Imperial. The Imperial Salt is an SC3 material, which in the St. Croix world, SC3 for me is kind of the sweet spot for performance. This is the cost of production and the cost of the material with the performance, and SC3 just is it's a phenomenal material that our guys, our engineers, and our production folks at St. Croix really figured out how to handle well and really get a lot of performance out of it. We also use our IPC tooling with the Imperial Salt, and that's what IPC tooling refers to, is the mandrels or the mold, if you want to use that term, that we roll our blanks on. IPC really tells you that that's our best, our most finely engineered machine tooling. We have non-ice PC tooling, for example, in Triumph, that they're great pieces, great rods. They're just not as finely engineered and machined as our IPC rods or blanks. So that's Imperial Salt. Those rods are in our lineup. They're available now. It's been a real challenge. David and I were speaking before we started here about the number of people that have come into fly fishing, and it has really caused a pretty huge demand for fly rods. So we scrambled to produce enough of them, but it's been a very good series for us, both Imperial and Imperial Salt. Two more series I'm going to touch on, and this is going into inshore fishing, trout, flounder, puppy drum. We have our Mojo inshore. That rod has been in the lineup for over 10 years. Last year we reintroduced it. Last year this time we were talking about it, but I don't think I had one to show yet. So Imperial Mojo inshore looks somewhat similar to Imperial Salt. It's got a similar color scheme, but this rod replaces the retired Mojo inshore that you might remember was a dark cherry, kind of looked like purple, and it had a split handle. This Mojo inshore is full. It's a full cork handle. We do have the EVA butt on it. On the medium heavies and heavies, you'll see that Mojo inshore has this EVA section is actually, there's a piece here and then there's a piece here, and we've inserted some EVA foam here instead of cork to protect the handle from rod holders. So if you're in a boat and you're bringing these in and out of a rod holder repeatedly, it can damage this cork over time. So we did put some EVA here just below the reel seat to better protect the rod and just make it more durable. We're using a Sea Guide reel seat on this, traditional up-locking reel seat. This is our 7-foot medium spinning rod. So traditional reel seat configuration, foregrip. Our hook keeper here, it's a double foot hook keeper. I call it the butterfly hook keeper. Makes it easy to go in and out of. And then we're using Sea Guide, a guide platform. We've gone to Sea Guide. Again, we were talking about this a little earlier. They've come a long way in their design and production of the guides, and particularly how they secure the guide inserts. Sea Guide, along with Fuji, Keegan, or some of the other guide manufacturers that have developed a way of crowning the insert or the interior of the guide to stabilize the guide insert. These guide inserts are ceramic. They're pressed into the guides, and with a crowning, in a very gross sense, there's instead of the side of the guide being flat, they crown it slightly, and that locks in that the guide insert as it's placed. So for the Sea Guide platform on this, it's going to be really durable. We haven't seen guide insert issues with this, and this series is very extensive. We have over 20 models in it. It runs from a 6.5-foot medium to 7 foot, 7.5, up to 7 foot 10 and 7 foot 11. We stopped just short of 8 footers, mostly because of shipping constraints. But I think, Joe, you may have one of these rods. There's a trout rod in this series that I baked for. It's a 7-foot light for later wintertime fishing, for big fish when you're throwing really small baits. We have a 7-foot light in Mojo inshore that has been, it's been one of my favorites. The 7.6s and the 7-footers are kind of the heart of our inshore offering with Mojo inshore, and it's been a really good series.